Welcome back, everyone, to the School on a Mission podcast. My name is Andrew McPeak, and co-hosting this podcast along with me is the incomparable, the incredible Gina Watts.
Hey, hey.
Well, folks, if you believe that schools should be more than just essays and GPAs, if you believe that EQs are just as important as IQs, and if you expect amazing things from the next generation, then you are in the right place, because we believe that too.
So today we're talking about a hot topic, and that is AI in the classroom.
Somebody just shivered in their car as they were driving to work. Not AI, not the classroom. Yeah, this is one of the biggest, hottest debates in schools right now. As AI becomes more and more advanced, schools are starting to weigh in on the pros and cons of using AIs in their school. And there's lots of different options to that, right? Mm-hmm. But before we get to all that good stuff, we got some more good stuff, which is our opening question. Are you ready, Gina?
I'm so ready.
Okay, so this is a good one. If AI were to write a tell-all autobiography, this is the ChatGPT tell-all autobiography, what would the title be? And by the way, folks, we do these questions every week. We have no idea what the other person's about to say. We prepare for this separately, so our surprise is genuine, and I cannot wait to hear what yours is, Gina.
As Andrew leans in with his hand on his face, like, oh my goodness, where's my popcorn? Okay, so when I hear this question, I'm thinking about AI like beyond ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's great.
True
Oh,
artificial intelligence.
got like Terminator stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So this is my tell-all title. It is Corny Collins, just like I normally would be. So is everybody ready?
Yep.
Drum roll, please. Okay. Will the real AI please stand up? iRobot is a farce. Get to know the real me. It's a very long title, but let me say it again. Will the real AI please stand up?
I like that.
iRobot is a farce. Get to know the real me.
I like that.
I feel like because, Tesla's coming in and doing things, yep. And, there's robots that kind of look like the robots from iRobot.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, people are getting scared.
Yeah.
People are getting nervous that we're actually living in those days. And I feel like AI would say it's a farce.
Yep.
It's fake news.
Let me tell you what I'm really up to.
Exactly.
It's good. Sometimes it feels like they design these robots hey, what's a design that really just freak people out?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's look in the movies. Yes. Let's look in our glossary of movies and see which one. Yeah.
See if we can find one.
Okay, so I think Andrew probably has 7, but
yeah,
he paused, so that means he has a lot.
Well, I wrote 3 and one of them's terrible, but I'll give you the other 2 I gave.
Okay. All right.
One of them I thought of a title, but I couldn't think of a subtitle, so here it is. I'm saving my best for last. Okay. So here's my first one. Why all the term papers?
That's ChatGPT's
question
right now.
Why all the term papers? I just feel like that's a good, okay, but here's my actual one. This one has a full subtitle too.
Okay.
Being the intelligence in the room, my life as everyone's favorite problem solver.
I love it.
Yep.
I feel like that's that is a definite tell-all. It could be also maybe even a white paper if somebody wants to write about how they feel about ChatGPT.
Well, I imagine ChatGPT saving all of our dumb questions and having a whole chapter on here's the dumbest things I've been asked to do, That would be a pretty good one.
That would be a good search.
Yeah.
What is the dumbest thing you've been asked to do? ChatGPT.
That would be a tell-all.
That's good. That was fun.
Yeah.
If you guys have a tell-all title that you want to share, we would enjoy it.
Yeah, I really would.
Oh, goodness. Well, it's crazy the things that we will see in the future. And it kind of does feel like some of the future is right now.
Yeah, especially with this AI topic. And I know we're not to the Terminator AIs yet, despite the scary robots people keep designing. But where we are is this idea of generative AI, right? This new reality has come upon us. It is affecting schools in ways like never before, just in the last couple of years. And today we have an expert, probably not just an expert. I think he's actually the expert that is speaking to how AI is affecting schools. So if you don't know him, his name is Joe Fatheree. He's a full-time teacher right now at Effingham High School in Effingham, Illinois. But and by the way, in the classroom, he's teaching innovation and he's doing all kinds of things, right? So he's focused on student imagination, creativity, all that kind of stuff. But he is also the guy that people go to consult with them about whether or not and how to use AI in school districts. So people are flying him all around the world. He's an amazing, amazing guy. I actually first met Joe. Somebody connected him to me through a friend. And he was actually introduced as, if you want to talk about schools and AI, he is the guy to talk to. We've had a couple of conversations, and I would 100% agree. But rather than introducing him, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Well, this is my 35th year in public education. I've taught in several different venues and different subject matters. And I don't know, circa 2000, I had an opportunity to start a multimedia class at Effingham High School in Effingham, Illinois. And we did at that time, it was primarily a storytelling class, and it provided kids with an opportunity to produce films. We ran a very large student-operated film festival. Kids had their film footage shown all over the planet. And it was really a unique experience for most of the kids because hardly any of them at that time had ever had access to cameras and editing. And then fast forward about 5 years, everybody had a cell phone and they were carrying around, Fox Studios in their pocket. And so I had to change a little bit the focus of how we did things. And so my idea was every kid still had a story to tell, but they used different mediums. And so we did everything from, again, filmmaking, songwriting, writing books, to working with artificial intelligence, working with robotics, 3D printing, you name it. If a student came up with it, we tried to utilize it for our kids. And as I got into those things deeper and deeper, I started realizing some of the challenges that came with technology as well as some of the benefits. And I was blessed. I was named Illinois Teacher of the Year in 2007, received the NEA's top award in 2009. and 2016, I was named one of the top 10 teachers in the world by the Varkey Foundation. And I say that just because every one of those levels opened new doors of opportunity for myself and my students. And I just, all of a sudden the globe is your influence, and you've got classrooms all over the planet you're able to bring back to your kids and to talk, and hopefully do the same, with other schools around the world. And I had an opportunity to work with the National Network of State Teachers of the Year for several years as our director of strategic projects while I taught full time. So I had access to a lot of classrooms and a lot of technology. Left them in 2018 to start my doctorate at the University of Illinois, where my field of study is artificial intelligence, and I'm really looking at the synthetic relationships that form between kids and automated systems. As the deeper I got into those things, I started to realize, there are a lot of opportunities out there that can really just elevate the profession. It can help teachers increase their productivity and hopefully reduce burnout. It's a way to increase student engagement and really help our kids, develop entrepreneurial ideas. But at the same time, I started to discover a lot of the risks that were out there. And that's kind of the world I'm in right now, is trying to help school districts develop a better understanding how to move forward.
Gina, Joe's journey through education is seriously impressive, right? From starting a multimedia class way back, right? He was working with robotics and AI and 3D printing before anybody was. And he's really seen the evolution of the technology and hasn't just stuck with the way he used to do things. He's evolving along with it.
Yeah, he really did evolve with the times and found new ways for kids to tell their stories using the tech that they were being exposed to even outside the classroom.
Exactly, yeah. But it's not just about jumping on every new tech trend. Joe also has this really long-term vision, especially now that he's deep diving into AI. He's not just focusing on those shiny new tools that we have, but really thinking about both the risks and the benefits of this new technology.
Right. Well, and speaking of AI, Joe's perspective on it is fascinating. It's been around for a while, but with ChatGPT opening the floodgates, schools are now trying to figure out how to handle it.
Yeah.
Some schools are blocking it while others are experimenting with it. but maybe a little too loosely.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to talk to Joe about this. I think we should hear his take on how he thinks AI will shape the future of education and what excites him most about this new reality.
AI has been around since the late 1950s, but it's really been around since ChatGPT opened the door a couple of years ago. That's really, the launchpad moment. And so schools were ill prepared for that. And I go back, one of the places I get the pleasure of working at is down in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where, had a huge part of the bringing the Manhattan Project to life. And last year, when the movie Oppenheimer came out, we hosted an event where we brought in, you know, uh, luminary scientists and developers in AI, and we showcased the film Oppenheimer the day after Trinity, and we had 5 students discuss on stage with these scientists and leaders about could lessons learned from the Manhattan Project be applied to AI and emerging technology. And it was really interesting to listen to these kids' perspective on things. And what we've kind of found out is that schools right now are in a couple of different modes of thought. One is we're blocking it because we don't know how to move forward on it. And I don't blame anybody for doing that. They don't know how to go forward on it. It's they want to make sure it's done so in an ethical, responsible way. And so in their mind's eye, they're trying to do it the right way. And other ones, they are trying to experiment, but a lot of the experiments aren't really controlled. It's like, Bob's using it in the back lab, and I'm sure Bob's a great guy, but we really don't know what Bob's doing, and there's no feedback loop for the superintendent, who's the purchasing agent, or the people who are going to have to, create policy around this. So right now, I say that schools are not in limbo because they are moving forward, but how it's impacting school is how kids are using it on the outside. Kids are home and they're playing and they're exploring and they're developing and doing all the things that kids have done with computing and social media since it's been available to them. And there's benefits to that because the kids are really thinking out of the box and they're seeing what's coming down the road. And there are also risks for it because they don't understand some of the things they're putting out there, how the information is going to be used. Has it been vetted? Really looking at academic integrity and what it means to own my work as what I would call co-authoring with an AI, or basically plagiarizing with an AI. And those are two different things, by the way. And so I think the kids are ahead of us right now, but schools are starting to take this on. There are a few states that have got policy out there. Our governor recently appointed me to a statewide task force here in Illinois that we're looking at AI usage across the state. And what I love about what we're doing here is across multiple industries. So we're going to have a better snapshot of where we want to go down the road. We're just not there yet. So for me, school is almost every day somebody calling, can you come in, talk to us, give an AI 101 of what AI looks like in the real world. What does it look like at school? And what are our next steps for moving forward with that? So I think you're going to see it more deeply used in school setting. In the coming months, I did a workshop 2 days ago with some great teachers, just showing them how to make lessons and what it looks like. And I had a guy come in and he's like, I'm here under duress, I'm telling you. I do not want to be here. I'm not a fan of AI. And I said, you know what? It's Providence that you're here. I really think it's great that we got people from different areas of the spectrum having conversation. And his concern wasn't that, he thought it was Terminator and, Skynet was coming. It was not that. He just wanted to make sure that his kids didn't lose their voice and their agency. And that's a valid point. But when we got done, 6 hours later, he came back and goes, wow, I've got a whole different perspective because I'm looking at the productivity on this. I'm figuring out maybe how I could use it to enhance student learning. So what I tell people is this, Andrew, that you are where you are. You're not behind. Let's just look at their benefits and their risk. There's no need to be scared. Give yourself permission to fail, and we'll be okay with it. And let's just share what we know, and we'll figure this out together.
It's so fascinating to me to hear how Joe ties AI back to something as monumental as the Manhattan Project, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds really intense when he says that, but I mean, the stakes might be a little bit different, but the way we're dealing with this emerging technology, this thing AI, It has a lot of similarities to that, right? People are still figuring out how to approach it ethically and responsibly.
He really nailed it when he said schools are in different modes of thought right now.
Yeah.
Some are blocking AI altogether, while others are letting it in, but without much control or oversight. It's like we're still in the Wild West when it comes to how AI is handled in schools.
Yeah. Yeah. And meanwhile, and this is the biggest problem, the kids are out there playing around with this, right? Figuring out what it can do and how it can help them. The kids are actually ahead of their schools in a lot of ways on this subject, which is creating this gap. And that's the gap that we need to close. But as Joe said, it's not about being scared of this new technology. It's about understanding the risks and the rewards and giving ourselves permission to learn and even fail along the way.
That's such a good point. AI isn't going anywhere, so we need to get comfortable with the learning as we go. And speaking of learning, Joe has been on the front lines of this. I wonder how we can keep pushing these innovations forward in the classroom.
I think with a little bit of training, you and I and the other people on your team, I could get them together after a couple hours training, and we could walk into a school and we could create a lesson plan for every day for every subject for the year within a week. I'd be more than happy to take that on. I can't tell you, Andrew, if they're any good. I just know they're done. All right. And so I say that a little tongue in cheek because the easy thing is to go in and type it in and push the button and believe we have something with fidelity. What we need to do is really, as district leaders and teacher leaders, we need to come back and have conversations. What are the constructs of a great lesson? What do you really think needs to be included in there? And we did that the other day, and it was fascinating watching these teacher leaders come together and the different things they all thought were essential parts of a great lesson. Well, in my district, I want us to come to some kind of a conclusion on that. We've worked together, we've crowdsourced it, we're figuring it out. And once we get that done, then I think we're ready to go make the magic happen. And we can go work on prompt engineering, get great lessons come out. And what may have taken us 5 or 6 hours before, maybe it takes us 15 minutes to develop it. But then we have an hour or two to really debate it and look at it and chew on it and really think about, is this the best lesson I can create for my kids? So I think there are things there that they can do. I think in terms of just letters that are writing, looking at topic exploration, being able to upload PDF files with multiple pages and asking it, okay, there are 20 of these, go through and read them, come up with a summary for me, prioritize them, find key level or pieces of text in there, stuff that would taken me days to do, I can do in minutes. And now I can really spend the time thinking about, okay, here are the 2 resources I want to hone in on. How can I make the magic happen for my kids? If I've got a lesson that's a little bit stale and I'm like, okay, help me find some new engaging activities or interactive. And it's been fun because when I talk to teachers about this, one of the very first things they ask me is, what do you mean by interactive, Joe? And I'm like, what do you mean by interactive in your space? Because interactive to you in an English classroom may be totally different in a science classroom. I wanted to do a lesson on teaching quantum entanglement to kids the other day, which is a pretty complex thought process to look at. And so I went into Microsoft Copilot and I said, all right, use a traditional deck of cards. I want you to make me a card game that helps kids understand quantum entanglement. 2 seconds later, I got an amazing game. Now I've gone through and I've made some tweaks to it, and then what I would love to do is throw it out to a co-teacher and say, okay, tell me how we make this better. Kids, you play it once, you tell me how we make this better. All right, we're going to make it our own. But those are things I could never do before.
It's amazing how AI is being used to bridge gaps too. Joe gave great examples of how AI can be integrated into the classroom.
I heard Microsoft's coming out with Chemistry GPT. So kids being able to take different elements and putting them together and making different medicines. Maybe the cure for cancer is right there in the mind of a kid if we can just help them think that process out. Sora is a new tool that OpenAI is going to roll out. You're going to be able to do textual prompts and come up with just ridiculous video that's going to be available. And so I thought, I was just in another room working with a Vive VR headset, and I thought, here shortly, if I was in a history classroom, I'm like, okay, you're going to do your research on everything that you can find on Selma. And I want you to put together the story in your mind's eye of Selma. And tomorrow we're going there. We're going to put this video in the VR headsets and we're going to go. And by the way, we're going to join schools online from different parts of the country and we're walking together. And we're going to talk about would the marchers that were there that day is what we conjured up in our vision, is it historically accurate from what they saw? What's missing in those things? Those are very deep level conversations that kids are going to have. I've got a lesson that I put together using Copilot and DALL-E 3, and I just said go through and make a image of a dragon flying over a hobbit village. And I want it at night, at dark. And so what I would do in a classroom after reading The Hobbit, I'd say, you know what, Tolkien's going to be here, our guest teacher tomorrow. I want you to go through, capture every vision in your mind's eye from all the chapters in The Hobbit. And I want you to be thinking about what was he saying to you. Then we're going to go into DALL-E and you're going to create, Andrew, you've got chapters 1 through 5. Joe, you've got 6 through 10. And you're going to stand up in front of the class and you're going to share through your imagery what you feel like Tolkien was trying to talk about. And by the way, we're going to have a lesson on how emotion is tied to color. And so I want to make sure all of that is built in. That again is deeper critical thinking that we're going to be able to have to work with kids. I think about like the CTE kid who struggles with writing, struggles with math. He has disabilities in both those areas. He'd be great he wants to start a landscaping business. And so I'm going to call him Johnny, and Johnny's got, he writes a letter to the big company. He wants the job, but his grammar and spelling, they're so atrocious. HR is going to tear the thing in half and never look at it. I can teach him how to use ChatGPT to write letters to clients that takes that disability away and really helps him present himself as who he wants to be. And so there's a lot of different areas with that. I think the problem is, Andrew, there's not enough of those examples out there for teachers to look at right now. The more we crowdsource this, the more we share our successes and our failures, I think the farther we're going to be along.
The idea of something like chemistry GPT is pretty wild.
Yeah, it is.
Imagine a kid putting elements together and creating potential medicines in class.
That's incredible.
The possibilities are huge. And like Joe said, maybe the cure for cancer is in the mind of a student in your classroom, friends, right now.
Yeah, that's the way we need to start thinking, I think. Because AI isn't just automating tasks, right? It's unlocking creativity and opportunities for students who might have been held back by some traditional learning structures.
Right.
But it also raises a big question, I think. With AI becoming more and more prevalent, how do we see the role of a teacher in a classroom evolving?
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, like I was kind of glad I'm out of the classroom right now.
Yeah.
When it comes to AI.
It's complicated.
Because I don't know how I would have responded to it. So our friends listening, teachers are definitely going to need new skills and a fresh mindset to guide students in this AI-driven world, no matter where your school currently falls, like in the spectrum
Absolutely.
of like banning it or using it loosely. We have to evolve and we have to figure this out together. I wonder what kind of professional development will be necessary to prepare educators for this shift.
Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, those systems are really for kids 13 years and older. And so we don't have a lot there for young kids yet. I know that's going to change. But what I'm telling districts right now is use this as the year of the teacher. Get your staff where they feel good about what's going on, the year of the administrator. And if you have, some bright and shining star teachers that are willing to take this stuff on and say, you know what, I got a class I think this would be really good for. Here's my proposal for using it with the kids. And I really encourage administrators to say, have them deliver a plan for you, not because they're trying to block your stuff. We're trying to learn so we can share. But imagine kids being able all of a sudden to start putting their stuff from their brains into these engines and being able to use it and then having to own their knowledge and debate and discuss and argue and critique each other's work. To me, that's how we move the ball forward.
Joe goes on to talk about how there are two parts. Part one is where we are now, and part two is about where he sees it going in the future. So let's hear a little bit more about what he sees about tech and AI happening now.
We have some really good tools that will let you do a lot of searches. really helps conjure up, takes a knowledge base out there, brings it back to you. If the stronger your prompts are, the better the material that you get back. So teachers are going to be able to they're going to be able to increase their productivity. That's one thing where they're going to be able to reduce workload. And I talk to teachers about what are you going to do with your extra time? And I answer that for them. You're going to fill it with other stuff. So one of the things we could do is actually protect your health and welfare. We want you around for a long time. We want your administrators around. So it's okay you have extra time to conjure up ideas and work with your kids, or go out and work out and do things. You don't have to drag stuff home every night. I want you around for a long period of time. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is learning how to manage it in the classroom with your kids and feeling comfortable using it with them. There's this great debate on academic integrity and all it's being used for to cheat right now. And I'm like, Johnny's been cheating since he could write on a cave wall in ancient France with charcoal. And so we've got to figure out how do we light the intrinsic fire in our kids while at the same time dealing with academic integrity issues. And so I have a few districts that I've been talking with. They're working on sliding scales of co-authorship. And so what I liken this to, so if you use Gmail or Google Docs and use typing in and it gives you some textual prompts, if you don't delete those, you are co-authoring. And very few people I know says, oh, I despise these suggestions, so I'm going to delete them all. That's not what we do. We take it as it helps us think through things. Well, why is it good for us as adults and it's horrible for kids? And so what some of the schools are looking at, they've got a sliding scale, and I'm going to make one up. So a 5 might be 100% student created. A 4 might be use AI to explore a topic. A 3 might be used to create an outline. A 2 might be to be able to lay out the framework for a slide presentation. But having kids understand that, the difference between using an AI as a tool and cheating, to me, is the transparency. If I just hit a button and push it and I submit it as mine, obviously that's not my work. But if I'm going through the steps of it, I am co-authoring in some fashion. And I think it's been the same way. And I'll have people online listen to your show that may not agree with me, and that's okay. Like I said earlier, it's okay for us to come from different places, and I'd love to hear their feedback. But, if you do peer editing in your classroom, you're co-authoring. You're just not using technology to do it. You're using, us being able to talk to one another. And we're also influenced by a lot of things on the outside. So I think we got to be careful of just saying using it is wrong. And we're doing that sometimes at the university level, and we're blocking it at the K-12 level because of that. Wouldn't it be better if we just talked to our kids about using this tool, owning what we own, a way we created, and giving credit to what we don't? And so in the bibliography, talking about the areas where you use prompts, what they look like, to me, that's the better direction to be able to go.
Okay, and here's part 2. What's ahead for us as AI continues to evolve in the classroom?
I look at what's next. One of the things we're talking about are intelligent tutoring systems so all of a sudden a teacher has 25 assistant teachers in the classroom via technology. And these assistant teachers, they will get on a laptop, they're going to get to know the kids. If you have an IEP or a 504 plan, if I'm down and droopy that day, they may use the camera right here and use Paul Ekman's work from the late 1970s, who mapped human emotion to facial expressions, and say, hey, I see his face looks a little, what's going on? Is he disengaged? They may hear anxiety in my voice and be able to come up with prompts and do things. Well, we're not prepped to do that yet. There's a great video out there from a company called Moxie, and they have a little intelligent robot they've created. And I love their commercial, but when I watch it, I see the parents, they're always standing on the peripheral and the bot's always in the middle. And for me, I would like to see that reversed. I'd like to see the parent and the teacher in the middle. I don't want to have the technology replace the human. It can supplement and it can augment there. And I need to know when it's my turn to step back and my time to step forward. But my time is not always to hide in the shadows. My kids need to know that I'm there. They need to know. And even if the bot's empathetic, I get that. That's great. But it's different than me walking by and putting a hand on the shoulder of somebody who's really struggling that day. Says, we got you. You're going to be okay today. or being there and high-fiving somebody whenever they've got that aha moment in the classroom. That's not the place of an AI to be doing that. That's not what they were created for. So I think there's going to have to be professional learnings in both of those different phases on how we maximize that. I think the easy one is the first one, is talking about the tools we have now. The harder part gets to be as it gets more advanced and it gets more invasive, where you've got to be able to measure time on devices. We got to know, are these kids really, that's what my whole doctoral degree is on, about the development of these relationships between man and machines, and where are they healthy or are they not? And do we catch it too late? I don't want that to be the case that happens. And, there's a great book out there I think all your viewers should pick up and read. It's called The Anxious Generation. And it spends a lot of time on how social media and cell phones have impacted where we're at, but kind of where they stopped is where my work starts. And that's where I'm looking at if it's had that potentially level of impact from those things, what is it going to be like from systems that are actively out seeking to develop relationships with you? In some cases, that may be great, and in some cases, it may not be. And so helping schools also learn, and parents, what are the safeguards to help them make sure that it's deployed in a responsible manner?
Finally, let's hear more about how AI can be integrated into classrooms and how we can keep pushing these innovations forward without losing that human connection.
I went to DALL-E 3, and I asked it to create me a tadpole. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have my kids look at the life cycle of a frog. They're going to get up and use the research they did to create these images. That's what's going to go into the prompt. And then whenever the images come out, I've got to stand up and I've got to talk about what's right and what's wrong. I'm equally okay if the AI generates it incorrectly, because that's not what I'm there to teach you. I'm not there to teach the AI. I'm there to teach the kid. And so I want to know, do you have, after being in this part of the class, do you have the knowledge now to tell me the AI did it wrong? That's just as important as it saying the AI did it right. And so, the kid could go out and do all kinds of drawings. They could find information on the internet. But in this case, you could say their creation was just the prompt. Well, the prompt came from all of the research they did to put this information together. And so I look at on the visual side, that's an area where I just want to know what your workload looked like going in. This is the end result. But to me, the picture is the cherry on top of the sundae. The rest of it is all of the work that you were doing. I look at the letter that I was talking to you about, the fictional kid who was running the landscaping business. So is it better for him to always have poor grammar, horrible writing, where he is typecast as someone with this level of intelligence? Or is it better that I can teach him how to use this as a writing tool and over time hopefully improve his writing and really give him job opportunities down the road? There is a debate out there to have about academic integrity. I don't think it's AI's fault. We had the same copy and pasting when Google came out. We had the same copy and pasting. We just called it writing with an ink pen whenever people were cheating off of somebody's paper in the 1950s. And so cheating is cheating. It's just they're using different tools. My question for those that are oppositional to this is, what are we doing to light the intrinsic fire in our kids? I've had, there's always going to be someone that looks to take a shortcut. That's unfortunate. But most of the kids I've had the pleasure of working with is, once I help them understand the value of their work, they don't want somebody else to get the credit. And that includes AI. And I've talked to kids, especially in the art space, where while they are okay going to it for ideas, they want their painting, they want their drawing. They don't want it to have anybody else's name on it. So why can't we do that for mathematics and language arts and places like that? I think we can do that. That's probably one of the areas of professional learning that we need to add to our list of trainings.
Gina, I love how Joe breaks all of this down. It's not about whether AI gets things right or wrong, right? It's about teaching students to spot those mistakes and use AI as a tool for their learning, not as a replacement for their effort.
Exactly. It's like he's saying the AI is just the icing on the cake.
Yes.
The real learning comes from all the research and thought students put into it beforehand. It's a way to engage them in deeper critical thinking.
Absolutely. And that's key, right? Helping students own their work and making sure they understand the process behind the results, not just relying on AI to do all the heavy lifting. But that's a challenge for educators, right? Like, how do school leaders even begin to implement AI in a way that actually enhances education without falling into some of the pitfalls that could happen along the way?
You know, Joe is so on point. He explicitly talks about this. He says, academic integrity and lighting that intrinsic fire in students brings us to a bigger question.
Yeah.
What steps should school leaders take to integrate AI effectively into their schools? What strategies should they consider? And what should they avoid as they navigate these new technologies?
Yeah. It's one thing to have AI tools available. It's another thing to use them in a way that actually enhances learning without compromising the quality of education or the creativity that could be happening in the classroom.
I really would look at some of the different the plans that are out there from the different states. There's some good information out there. ISTE has some really great work for school administrators and teachers. But I would take all of that stuff, put it together, and the very first thing I'd do is I would form a committee where I could bring staff in and we start the conversation. I'd have administrators, I'd have teachers from different curricular areas, as much diversity as I can bring into that committee in terms of color, sex, grade level, subject matter, whatever diversity I can bring in there. I think it's important because at the end of the day, we're all going to be using it and we all need to have a voice in this. And I'd bring people in that are going to be willing to push me back respectfully, because I think that's important, that things they're thinking about, somebody's thinking about that question. They just may not be bold enough to ask it right now. So bring them to the table, create your norms where you can have great conversation about things. And then I would do a deep dive into what does the next year look like at our school? What do we want AI usage to look like? Which tools are we going to use? What guidelines do we have for staff and teachers? How are we going to communicate with parents? My very first thing is explaining our why. Why are we using AI? And I think that's really important because then you understand which tool and what time you're using. And then I take the what and the where and the how, and I put all of those things in there. To me, that's a really critical piece. I'm working with schools all over the country on that. And it's been fun to watch their policy guides or procedure guides come to life. They've all been very, very good. The amount of conversations they've had on the back end, I think have been very, very rich. But that's where I would start, is bringing this grouping together. And I wouldn't have everybody in my district. If you got people that aren't there yet, then don't make them be there yet. Bring on your early adopters. I would open up for anybody and everybody. And I would probably, as a school leader, say, you know what, don't worry about it right now. However, at some point in time, we are going to have policy on this, and we will figure out as a district how we're going to move forward. That's far less threatening. It gives people a chance to breathe on things. I would make sure that I had sandboxes where people could experiment. I would have open house where people could come in and see. I would talk to my staff about how we're going to roll this out. And if you want to try stuff, this is the way to stay connected so I can measure our effectiveness. And I think, Andrew, if we do those things, and I'm watching it happen in real time, for those districts that are doing that, they are moving ahead and they're feeling comfortable about it. If you ask me about something I wouldn't do, I wouldn't ignore digital citizenship, where our kids really need to understand what's real and what's not real. They need to understand the implications of what they are posting and what they are creating on the internet. They need to understand the implications behind creating content that's hateful and biased and prejudiced and making images that are downgrading to people. They need to understand the problems that come with that. They need to understand what it's like when you're developing relationships with synthetic beings out there, and staff needs to understand that. So a lot of districts, and I'm not knocking anyone because I understand the pressure of being in public education or private education and trying to teach, but we can no longer let SEL or social emotional learning or we can't let digital citizenship be things we're always going to get to. They need to be front and center and a part of this and integrated into it. Because as this technology does become more invasive, there's going to be a point in time where you're not going to be able to educate people at the level you want, because the kids are already doing it outside at such a level that we're going to have what we have. So we have a window of opportunity now. And I would also say, this would be my last piece, share what you learn and be open to learn from others. There's no need to recreate the wheel 500 times. We should create it together. And policymakers really need to hear from you. They need to hear the positives and the risk side of both of those, so that they can make policy that helps make this country safe as we're using this new tool.
You know, Joe really drives home some great points here. His final advice is pure gold. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Share what you learn and learn from others. It's about building a community of educators who can navigate these challenges together and push forward into this next phase of education. It's really a collective effort. So for all of our listeners out there, whether you're just starting to explore AI or you're deep in the process, remember to keep those conversations going, and don't be afraid to lean on your community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we got to thank Joe for all of the great insights that he gave us. I mean, this guy, he's literally working on his PhD on this subject, and he just taught us a whole class, I think, in the last 20 minutes or so. So I just really appreciate the work.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, he gave us so much information, Gina. We've covered a lot of ground. I think this conversation is really just the start. So we need to break it down with all this information that we have. We've got info. It's time for a DMI.
That's right, friends. DMI, it stands for Don't Miss It. And in this segment, Andrew and I will each highlight one key takeaway from today that we believe you shouldn't miss. So, Andrew, why don't you go first? What was something from this conversation with Joe that really is standing out to you?
Well, Joe, obviously brilliant. So many great ideas. He's thinking about things. I feel like he's 10, 15, 20 years ahead in some ways from a lot of school districts. But what I really loved, the term that he gave me that I had not heard before, is students seeing AI and the role that they're playing as, he called it, co-authoring. Co-authoring. I love that term.
I think adults need that language, Joe.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Because I think there's this great fear, right, that when kids use AI, they're just going to go write me a term paper on this, copy and paste it, right? But what he's saying is, what if you did some pre-work, right? And I've co-authored a book with somebody before, right? In order to truly collaborate with somebody, you have to do work ahead of time,
right?
And figure out, okay, what are we going to say together? What part are you going to play? What part am I going to play? We got to lay some things out. Then we go off and do solo work, and then we come back, right? And it's the same thing in working with AI. When I have worked with AI, if I ask it to just write a full thing for me, I have never had ChatGPT put out something that I didn't edit at least to some degree.
Right.
And the more work I do to put in a request that truly asks for what I'm looking for, with details and thoughts and leading ideas and all that stuff, the better the results I get.
Right.
And I think that's what he's pointing out is, for it to truly be a useful tool, we need to do our part, more or less. And if students could learn to do their part on the front end, preparation, thinking through the problems, the creativity, all that kind of stuff, and then do their role in the back end, editing, fact checking, organizing, making sure we get all that down, then that's going to create a symbiotic relationship where we're actually utilizing the best that this tool has to offer. I mean, if you look back over technologies that have been introduced through our history, I think about the clock. I think about the wheel when it first came along, right? And even honestly, the book. This is a crazy thought, but when information first started getting put into books after the printing press was invented, lots of thinkers said, well, what's going to happen to kids' memories now that they've got all the information's in a book and they don't have to remember it? They can just take it around with them. How insane is that? You know, each of those new technologies presented an opportunity for us to leverage the strengths of that technology
Mhm.
and adapt in order to use it, right?
Right.
Our memories probably aren't as good as they used to be, but we also don't really need them to be, right?
Right.
And so we need to have those same kind of wrestling conversations with artificial intelligence too. And I think it's going to come down to co-authoring.
Yes, that's so good. It's really your DMI kind of connects to mine in thinking about it as a strategy or an approach. This co-authoring kind of breaks down that wall of fear, because that's one of the things that stood out to me is like in talking with Joe is like the schools' postures have been, either we're not going to do anything with it or we're just going to use it.
Yeah.
But I think wherever you're at, it comes out of fear. Wherever you land on that spectrum, a lot of it's fueled by fear.
100%.
And I think one way to address fear is to create a strategy. When we asked the question earlier about what steps should school leaders take to integrate AI effectively into their school or to even just address it, I think it's just making time to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily at a public school board meeting, right?
That's a bad place for a
Yeah.
conversation, actually.
But it is, I think it is important to have make time.
Mhm.
Like, we know that everybody listening to this call, that you have full schedules, that you're wondering how you could fit one more thing into your daily agendas.
Yeah.
But I think if anything out of this you get, I think it's taking intentional time to have thoughtful conversations with administrators, with board members, with principals, with teachers, with students, with parents about AI
Yeah.
and about and then ultimately creating a strategy. And yes, that will take time.
Yep.
It will take time.
Yep.
But I think to do nothing,
Yep.
to ask no questions,
Believe us, in the long term, it's
Yeah.
going to be worse.
and to make just a blanket decision without a thoughtful approach to it.
Yeah.
Like, how many people are actually thinking about this as co-authoring?
Yeah.
Because really the tool will only do what you put into it.
That's exactly right.
When I think about AI, I think about, or ChatGPT in particular, I think about the number of people who are trying to do performance reviews.
Yeah.
And putting in a whole bunch of information, and then stuff comes out because you didn't ask for the right thing.
Yeah.
And now you got to hold so-and-so to something that you made up because you just put it in ChatGPT and it didn't edit it.
Yeah.
It didn't look at it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's really important that,
You still got to do your work.
yeah, you got to do your work.
And that will continue to be true no matter how advanced AI gets.
Yep,
Right.
no matter what.
We're bringing an element to the table that AI will never be able to replace, I think. The creativity, the ingenuity, the problem solving ability that we have is never going to be replaced. So you're spot on, Gina, spot on. Boy, we kind of waded into some deep waters.
A little bit.
Today.
Don't be angry, friends.
Don't be angry.
We're talking.
Yeah.
We're just having a conversation.
We are. And I hope that those listening will continue the conversation. If you want to look him up, Joe Fatheree, that's his last name is spelled with 2 E's at the end. He's an incredible leader. He's written books. He's given TED Talks. He's done all kinds of stuff on this subject. So follow him, stay in touch with him, because he's going to continue to put out some amazing work on this subject. We didn't mention this, I don't think, but his dissertation he's working on right now is about how AI and student interactions are functioning. Like, what is actually happening in a student's brain when they interact with an AI? It's going to be really fascinating to see some of that work as it releases. So thank you all today for listening to today's episode of the School on a Mission podcast. Before you hit skip onto your next podcast, we got a little challenge for you. Grab a pen, a notebook, a sticky note, even the back of your hand, and write down one action you're going to take this week. Maybe it's something you're going to do. Maybe it's something you're going to investigate further. Boy, there's a lot to investigate, right? Maybe it's something you want to read more about. There's a lot to be read. Or maybe it's just somebody you need to meet with. You need to bring up this subject and talk to. Whatever it is, write it down. Got it? Perfect. Now, shoot us a DM on social media. We cannot wait to hear the awesome things you're up to. And until next time, folks, stay curious, stay bold, and keep leading your school on a mission. The School on a Mission podcast is produced by Growing Leaders, powered by the Maxwell Leadership Foundation. You can find out more about Growing Leaders at growingleaders.com. We want to especially thank Joe Fatheree for joining us as a guest in today's episode. You can connect with him on LinkedIn by clicking the link in the show notes. This podcast was co-produced by Angelica Oliver and Kara Mallory. To find out more about the School on a Mission podcast, head over to schoolonamissionpodcast.com.